Well, down on the workbench, I've got a whole bit of a mess here. This all came to me in a box named Sato Parts, and I don't think the box is relevant. It says it's an 82B model, so I know it's an 82. It's not a B model though, because this engine has the A style cams. So the story behind this engine is it broke, and it sat in the box for a long time. As I was unboxing all this stuff, looking at it, I found the box had a Horizon Hobby service thing. So if you want to try to use that coupon, go ahead. But there's a date here on the bottom left. It expires, yeah, April of 2015. So at some point, some of these contents in this box were sent to Horizon, and they may have said, yeah, it's too much to repair. It's not cost prohibitive, whatever. So, but every engine I've looked at and repaired over the years has had a story behind it. So, this particular engine story is all centered around the valves and the rocker arms. So, this is everything that was in the box. So, there might be some stuff missing, but obviously, we're missing a valve here. We got one valve and one push rod and 1.5 rocker arms. So, this particular rocker arm and that one are both broken in half. I don't know how you do that. The cylinder in the motor, there's your other part of the story here. You can see that, if I can get it to stand up in the light. You've got one valve. Oh, there's the other valve. It's still in the motor. So that explains that. So, but this here one's missing the entire push rod guide and valve seat. It's brass, I believe. So that's just completely gone, and you can look straight down in there and see um, the bottom of the crankcase. I don't have a piston in there. I did have this apart. I put it back together just to keep some of the parts from flopping around, and mainly make sure I had all these bolts for the cylinders, and uh, just make sure everything's there for reassembly. But anyway, it's pretty nasty inside. The crankshaft and the bearings are pretty much seized together. I couldn't get the crankshaft off, so that's going to have to go and get some soaking with some oil and a little bit of heat encouragement. So, but something happened where this valve was put into the cylinder while it was running, because the rest of the story is on the piston here. So if you look at the piston, side to side, everything looks to be pretty good. So change the camera setting. Once you get up to the top of the piston, that's where the rest of the story begins to be told. So look at that lick right there in the middle of it. That valve, whenever it let go, went down and made contact, and I'm sure that this piston ejected it, and everything else out the top broke the rocker arm. So it's a sudden stoppage of the engine, probably at what I would assume is high power. There's a few more hit marks where it kind of rode around for a little bit before it finally stopped hitting. So anyway, this is as far as I'm concerned, everything in my hand right now is compromised. Obviously, the top of the cylinder or piston's no good. Somebody scratched an arrow. I don't know if you can see that. Looks like an arrow. Maybe that's for the direction. Yeah, because the dot goes towards the front for reassembly. So, but as far as I'm concerned, this is all no good, because of the amount of force that went into the top of the piston that may or may not have bent the connecting rod. And it's just it's one of those things, you could probably reuse it, but why would you? So, but it still moves. It's not seized up on the top end there, but we don't know how the bottom end is, if it got any kind of damage from getting hit so hard. So other things of interest, we got most everything else. For some reason, there's 3 valve covers in it, so we'll find the right one and use it. I've got a lot of these parts I actually have, because I have a bad habit of buying stuff on eBay when I see it, and I'm glad I did, because these engines they're still being made, but they're like $450 now, so it's kind of stupid expensive. The exhaust manifold's broke. It looks like it had a smoke system at some point, or smoke tap, or I guess, yeah, smoke tap's there. But we have half of a muffler. This muffler and exhaust doesn't fit, so that's no good. But everything else looks to be in pretty good shape. Um, I did have this all apart. The cam gear's in good shape. With that sudden stop, there's no sheared gears on the cam. I couldn't see the underside of the crankshaft, so I'm hoping that that is okay when we get it pulled apart. Um, this cylinder's trash though, because you can't repair that. I have no idea how you would even, you know, service that, because they don't sell that part. So going back to what I was just saying about eBay, I have got a lot of Sato parts off of eBay. Some of these recently, some of them within the past few years. So I have a whole new cylinder here. I got this from Horizon Hobby. They actually had it on a clearance sale. They had 2 left, so I snagged both of those, and I knew I would need them one day. So here we go. Bearings are from Boca Bearings, the absolute best you can get. Get the higher priced ones. These are the high performance HP series, and they are 40-ish bucks a piece. So they're a little pricier, but they don't leak. So they're slick as can be. Gaskets are coming from eBay. The Sato gaskets are just expensive, a lot more expensive. And this company off of eBay, not sponsored or nothing. I buy all this stuff with my own money, and a couple dozen engines I've done, they've always worked well. So there's their info there. Yep, it's just a gasket, gets the job done, works good. And let's see what else we got. Bearings, cylinder. As you can see too, there's no carburetor in anything that was in the box originally, so we need a carburetor to run it. So once again, eBay, at some point, I found a carburetor that should work on it. And push rods, we got a new set, just again, because the one that we have, I don't trust it. You know, it might have a bend in it. So they're cheap, relatively cheap. New push rods, new tappets. The ones in there, they're probably okay, but why not replace them? They're also cheap. Valve keeper, springs, and retainers. So with the new cylinder, the way they ship it, it's nothing up top. You don't have anything up top. So you've got no rocker arms, no rocker arm pins, no valves. So we have to have all that stuff replaced. So we've got the valve springs and keeper. They come in their own package together. These here are, I hate the word unobtainium, but that's basically what they are. You can't get these anymore, the valves in and out, unless there's a part number that's different than these. I don't know, but this again is an old packaging. You could tell the old colors on it. Found it on eBay a couple years ago, and thankfully I got them, and here we are. We're going to put them to use. So, and then the last thing is new rocker arms. So they're still being made. Got a new set there. Now the rocker arm pins that you need that goes through the rocker arm brackets here, thankfully, those were still in each one of these right there. So hopefully they'll thread in okay. I'm sure they're fine. These things are extremely hard metals. So, but that's what we're working with. Little project. This is going to go on a B-17. It's a Memphis Belle, I believe, for a friend of a friend. And this is just, he's got 2 engines. This is going to be one of the 4 engines on it, and gives me something to do. This one's going to be a bit of a project, because just the amount of work with getting it cleaned up and, you know, back to running. So first thing I'm going to do is just completely disassemble all this and get these parts soaking in some oil, and try and get the crankshaft cleaned off, get the old bearings off, and get the new ones on and into the crankcase. So we got a lot of work to do. I've got a little camera set up here to try and film some of it. So it gets pretty dirty when you start working on these things with oil and, you know, grease. I'll have the heat gun out, I'm sure, the parts cleaner. So anyway, we got a lot to do. Let's get to work. So I've got a little bit of ballistol sprayed into the motor here, letting it sit. It's been about 30 minutes, and I'm gonna let that stuff do its job. If you haven't ever used this stuff, it's pretty dang good. It's called ballistol. It's on Amazon. It's a little pricey, but for really tough jobs like this, I love it. It gets the job done really well. It's been sitting for a bit. I'm gonna use my heat gun here to put a little bit of heat on it, see if it'll free up. Definitely don't want to get it too hot, but just want to get it some heat so that oil can really sink into those crevices, do its job. There we go. Look, just broke loose. A little bit of heat. There we go. She's rotating. It ain't very clean, but it's spinning. That's going to make the rest of the disassembly, look at that, just so much better. There we go. That's the magic. A little heat and a little oil and a little time. Look, it's spinning really good now. Perfect. Next thing I'll do is get my cam gear puller, or whatever, battery terminal puller, and I'm going to pull this thrust washer off. Hopefully we can get that off relatively easily. Lots of heat, lots of oil, makes things free up. Look at that. Spinning good now. So this drive washer, these things don't like to come off at all, so we're going to give this a really generous bath with ballistol. Let that sit for a little while longer here, maybe another, I don't know, give it 5 minutes or so. Hit it with the heat gun, let it sit, hit it again, then I'll try it. All right, that's good and hot. I'm gonna let that sit for a little bit. I also hit the cam gear housing on it. That way that's got some heat working that oil in there. That's freed up. That's actually rotating just fine. It's just, I am going to completely disassemble it and inspect the everything inside. Just because it's here, and why not? We don't know the history of this motor, so we want to make sure we've got a good baseline of it. So, but that's good and hot to the touch right now. That should come off pretty easily, but I'm going to give it a couple minutes and we'll come back. Let's get that somewhat started and make sure I've got my grippers right in that groove before I really start clamping it down. So do a little bit at a time so it gets tight there. Sometimes they'll pop pretty quick. This one, I don't know, it might take it a lot of encouragement. So what I do is I kind of let it get some tension pulling on it and let it sit. And now that it's cooled off a bit, we got some heat on it. We got some time for a lot of that heat to dissipate. What I'm gonna do is just hit it with some heat again. Kind of guard it, because I've seen these things pop when they jump up. I don't want it to fall off on the floor. Spin it around, hit the other side, and kind of heating everything. Crankshaft, the actual drive washer, the crankcase, let everything get hot. Give it another quarter twist or whatever. There it goes. Look at that. Popped right off. Let's see. Is it clean? Ooh, she's warm. Get my glove on. See, I don't like putting a lot of pressure on that. I like to let the heat and the oil do its work. So yeah, that part came right off. That's our drive washer. And the little piece in there, I don't know what they call it, but that's what the drive washer goes into and compresses. And that is still on there. So I'm gonna give that a bath and some oil. Let that go in there, get some work done on that. And just like everything else, we'll give it some time, give it about 5-10 minutes, and we'll come back and see what it looks like. it's been sitting for a little bit now, and we've got it's cooled off to where I can touch it now. It's not as hot, so I got my little needle nose tweezers here. They're real small, so I can get into stuff and try to get under this and pry it. Look at that, it's already loosened up. I was gonna say pry it up and off, but there she goes. So that makes life a lot easier. Sometimes those are a little bit of a pain to get off, so it's not too hot now. But set that aside, and now we've got a rotating crankshaft with nothing attached to it. So what we can do now is I'm going to give it some taps with the hammer, and we'll see if it'll fall out. I think we got just a hair of movement, so if it doesn't want to move on its own, you can actually do some damage by overpowering it, hitting it way too hard. So what I'm going to do is use the heat gun. It did move. I can see it just slightly recessed now behind that front bearing. So now the goal is not to cook it. We're not trying to cook parts or melt metal or nothing. We're just trying to give it a little bit of expansion so that these parts can release. There we go. A couple more hits, still moving. Still coming out. Front bearing's released. I can see the front of the crank moving around. We're just now driving the rest of it out off the main bearing, and you can see, I can see that the main bearing's actually being pulled out with it just a little bit. So there we go. So now we got our crankcase, front bearing still installed, and we have crankshaft removed, and main bearing is still attached to the crankshaft. So you may have noticed I kind of stopped myself when I got to a point where I was looking at this bearing. Try to get this to focus. I've stopped myself because it came off with the crankshaft, which is pretty normal as you back it out of the crankcase. But it got to the lip right about here, and it just stopped. And I thought, oh, well, maybe this one has one of the removable pinion gears. And I looked and looked and looked on this. I polished it with a little bit of Scotch-Brite, and I can't find anything on there. And I looked at the manual. It shows the parts list for it, and there's not a pinion gear that's removable. It's a part of the crankshaft. So basically what I've had to do is make sure not damaging it. Did some research, and I found out that this main gear is just like every other one that I've done, or not main gear, main bearing, and it just, the whole bearing slides off. So it's very, very, I guess you could say, rust welded on there right now. It does not want to come off. So what I've been trying to do is figure out different ways to get it to remove it. And I tried some punches with kind of a chopstick method, one on this side, one on the other, and tapping each. Then that doesn't really work. So what I'm going to do is use my little mini vise that, let me see if I can zoom in on that from here. Get that out of the way. So the mini vise fits it pretty good where I can, there we go, centered up on there. So what I can do in the mini vise is I can drop it in like, right on this groove and push pressure on it there, and then gently tap the bearing out. So, but before we do that, you know what's coming. Heat and encouragement. Now I feel confident this is going to work. and not damage any component on the engine at all. So definitely don't want to damage this because this is not mine and I don't want to pay for a motor. So I got just enough clearance right here on my mini vise to put just the bearing in contact, and it's not supported very well, but if I tap it, there we go. That was a good jolt. See, I got a pretty good chunk of movement out of it there. Now I'm going to put a finger under it because I don't want it to fall on the floor. I feel like we're about to break her loose. There we go. Almost there. I think I can do it from here. Maybe. Not quite in the clear yet. Whew. She's hot. There it is. All right. So there we go. There goes the bearing. There's our crankshaft. Now we got something to work with. We can actually get this polished up, cleaned up, and start prepping it for the new bearings. So there's the old bearing. It's shot. So rusty, gummed up, nasty. Before we do that though, because I want to get everything in the parts bath together, we got to still get this front bearing out. And the front bearing is real simple. I'll take you with me over my toolbox. If you got a socket set, any kind of certain sockets, I used to have them all separated for this project, but I forget the size. It doesn't matter. The size is whatever one fits in there and knocks it out. So, which today's engine, that's going to be a 11 millimeter. And we'll need an extension. So 11 millimeter, if you can see how basically that slides right on up in there, and all the surface area that's on the inside of that bearing is in contact with the socket. So you know what's coming. Get all that aluminum on the crankcase hot so it's expanded, and that bearing should fall right out without having to use too much force. I'll be honest, I'm not a pro at this by no means, but I did damage a crankcase that was on a Sato 125 by using just brute force, and that crankshaft did not the engine was tight. It brand new everything. That motor was tight as a tick, and I ran it for a while and it ran hot because of all the friction, and it can be damaged, which is what I did. So I learned from it, and that's part of it. Cost me a crankcase, which again, eBay, that's where I find a lot of my stuff for a good price. So all right, so I got that in there, got good contact. I just hold this in my hand because you don't have to hit it too terribly hard, hopefully. And a couple taps, look for progress. Nothing yet. All right, first little bit of movement. I just saw it move out a little bit. A couple more taps. Another little bit of movement. Make sure I'm still centered on it. I try to push in and hold pressure downward. That way it doesn't bounce up. And all right, there's a quarter of the way. This bearing is really in there. Almost halfway. A couple more taps and we'll have it. There's halfway. Booyah, there she goes. So that's how your socket comes out, just like that. Doesn't do any damage to the crankcase. And there's your, I don't know if you can see that, look inside there. So that's just a hollowed out aluminum now, nothing inside of it. There's your front bearing that's going in the trash, which is over here. And Now we can start with some other disassembly. So this is what your cam gear rides in, of course, cam gear housing. Inside of there, here is your tappets. You've got intake and exhaust tappet. Inside of the housing is a gear, and there's your cam lobes. You can see them rotating around. This has freed up a lot since I've soaked it with oil. And you don't have to take these apart, but I am, just because I want to look inside and give it a good thorough cleaning. So they're simple to take apart. There's a small set screw type screw right here. Let me go get my screw, my driver. It's a 1.5 mil, I believe. Yep. So 1.5 mil. It's a little dirty, so try to, there we go, bottom out. Make sure you got good contact with it, and there we go. Nice click as it releases. So this has got that set screw. I'm gonna set that straight down there. The axle that the cam gear rides on is now free to move in and out. That's what that set screw goes into. So that can be a little bit of a challenge to get out. As you take that out, something to look out for, there's a shim on each side of it. They're really tiny. If you lose those, they are magnetic. I've used magnets to find them. And to get this out, I've got a smaller punch. It's too small. Where's my other one at? To get this out, just a little bit of light tapping. Again, I'm going to use the vise for this. So we'll find it where we can set her in, and I'm not going to punch it all the way through, but just get it started. I can just barely start to feel it moving through. Just barely. Get it about. You can hear that change in the pitch when I'm tapping it as it moves through. So, all right, that's coming out pretty good. Hold the camera back some. Camera makes this hard, but somebody said they wanted to see this, so I'm doing it for you guys and myself. I like doing it. So now that's pushing out pretty easily. It's dry in the middle. That's why I do this. There's no lube in the middle at all. So almost out. There we go. So there's the axle, and then the cam gear comes out. Now remember, there's two very tiny shims. So one of them came out on this side, and it's kind of seized up on there. So I'm gonna leave that there. And then the other one is also seized up, but that's on the inside. My little needle nose tweezers will get that off, hopefully. Now, these are magnetic in case it flies off, and dang, that's really on there. We may have to come back to that. But all right, now I got oily hands, so this is going to be hard to do. But there's the cam gear, and what I look for on these is the lobes. Obviously, you're going to have where your tappets run along the cam gear, and then I'm looking for any kind of spot where there's deformation from where that valve made contact on the top of the motor and the head. That's going to transfer a lot of energy into your cam, and I don't see anything on there that looks like it's compromised. It's good. Also, the teeth on the cam gear, there's nothing on those that's there's no missing teeth or bent teeth, and I think we're in good shape with that. So I'm gonna get all this stuff in the parts washer and let them get cleaned up, and we will start getting the bearings. I'm gonna go throw those in the freezer because when you put new bearings in, you got to get them cold, and then you heat the case up, and then they settle in where they're supposed to pretty easily. So these are going in the freezer, and these are going in the parts wash. We'll come back. All right, real quick. I was getting ready to get this stuff ready for the parts bin, and I took apart the cam gear housing. So there's our cam gear, looking good. That's our two shims that go along the outside of the axle on the cam gear. Those are fine. There's one tappet that fell out reasonably easily. And then I wanted to show you this. This other tappet is really seized up inside of this thing. So again, I'm fighting with the light here. Now I've used my punch to get some of it out, but it has gotten to a point where it does not want to move out anymore. So to me, that's a problem, because you want this stuff to move freely and float very easily inside this motor. So I'm gonna punch it out the rest of the way. If it's damaged, I'll show you. But I feel like this could be a problem for both. I got new tappets, so I'm not worried about the tappet, but I really doubt it's that. I think it's something to do with the cam gear housing and that guide that rides in. Because again, with this motor having a sudden stoppage, all that energy went down that piston and back up, possibly through the valve. And that's when you have broken rocker arms like this, all that energy went somewhere. Obviously, some of it went into the rocker arms to break both of them. The push rods transferred that energy into the tappets, which went into the cam gear and then into the crankshaft. But we found a weak point, I think, where some of that energy went sideways in our cam gear housing here. So let me get this out and we'll look at it closer. All right, I am punching away with this, trying to get that out. So for reference, this is the engine rear looking forward. This is on the left side of the engine. And if you look at how your cylinder would be attached to it, that would work like this. And obviously the left is your intake side, and that's what's blown out here. So your intake, push rod, when it's seized up or the piston started eating the valve, all that went into this. And this is unfortunately, this might add to the parts count for this engine. So, and these are, I don't even know if you can get these cam gear housings. So it does not want to come out without using more pressure than I'm comfortable using. So I've tapped it pretty firmly. There we go. That almost got it, actually. There we go. So it's there. It's out. We got her out. So I'm not really going to pay too much attention to these things because it's hard for me to tell if they're bad. Like, it's stiff in there, but I think, yeah, they roll straight. Both of them roll just fine. So they're not bent. So that leads me to think that it's this guide here, this one here. What I'll do is, again, I'm going to put these in the parts washer. I'm going to get everything really clean. I've got some really small brushes to hit it with. And then I've got these new tappets right here that we're going to throw in, and we'll see how they feel with those. So crankshaft, cam gear housing, cam gear, the axle shaft. Throw in these little spacers, shims. There'd be fine in there, and a lot of water and a little bit of that LA's totally awesome cleaning stuff, which is over here. Now this stuff is pretty damn awesome, but it does stain the aluminum or whatever, oxidize it just a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll run this for the time here, and I'll take it inside and wash it in my sink right away. That way it doesn't sit in there and you get that ugly look on the aluminum, so you kind of lose that luster. So got my partner in crime out here helping me out. What do you think? We gonna get this thing running today? She's like, what the heck's that noise, Dad? Sounds so weird. So, all right, let's get these done and we'll move on. Quick look. He's been in here for about 20 minutes, and look at that crankshaft now. really starting to show its shine again. All that rust is just coming right off of that the pinion gear there. Camshaft doesn't get, or cam gear doesn't get cleaned up too well, but it's just it's just it's going to be a little bit ugly after all this is said and done, but it's out of sight. As far as the crankcase, I removed that pretty quickly. That barely gets a minute, and even that little bit of time, you could see it kind of shaved. It just oxidized the outside just a little bit, but it's clean enough. I kind of focus on where the gear or the bearings are going to go. Most of that junk and gook that was in there, that's off the main bearing in the front. Looks good. I don't ever polish these or clean them with like Scotch-Brite or nothing, because I feel like you do remove a little bit of material, and it's just detrimental to keeping your bearings from leaking around them. So the good thing with the parts washer is it gets all these threads where all your cylinder and cam gear and your back plate, it cleans those out really well. So that's just something you don't really see, but it does make your threads clean out, so your screws have really good contact with the material. So the cam gear housing looks to be fine. I don't see anything that's bent. It's this one here that's got the issue. So the hole is straight, it's clear. I think it might have just been a little boogered up, and I'm going to put the new tappets in when I reassemble it, and we'll go from there whether we need to replace this or not, but I think it should be fine. Is that necessary? Absolutely not. But look how good that looks now. Beautiful. If it's beautiful, it's bound to run right. Just hitting all these areas where the gasket's going to make contact. That way I know it's nice and clean, and we've got a good mating surface. Cool. All right, I'm ready to rebuild the cam gear housing. So I've got my new tappets. Take these out, and we're going to use the new ones, throw away the old ones because I don't think there's anything worth keeping on them. So adios. All right, so cam gear housing, got everything pre-lubed a little bit. First thing we'll do, throw in our shaft just a little bit. Make sure it's going in the correct way. Got some oil through the holes there. So I've got my two, I don't think you can even see these, shims. They're tiny and easy to lose. So you just get one on each side of the cam gear. So first one's pretty easy. Just kind of throw the shaft in, lay it on there, and walk it into the shim. I say that, but it's giving me some trouble. There we go. Oh, missed it. Where'd you go? There it is. So let's try it again. Just like, oh my goodness. There, it's on it. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's on it, and I'm going to walk it down the shaft and put it in its place. So that's where that goes on the... Next is our cam gear. Can't really mess this up. It goes on one way. So back the shaft out, get the cam gear in, and I can see that the shim is still in its place. Now the cam gear is on the shaft. Now the other gear, or the other side of the shaft, you got to do the same thing. So what I do is I'll just put it, I'll hold it this way and insert the shim and just kind of eyeball it through the other end. And when I see that's there, I'll start pushing the rest of the shaft through, wiggle everything, and then nailed it. So got lucky on that, went right through the first time on that end. So spins freely. It's got lube all the way through the middle now. The only thing left is our set screw. And then this is a 1.5 mil again. It doesn't have to be super tight, but you want it in there enough to where it's not going to back out. So and there's the bottom, and tight it just a little bit, and she ain't going nowhere now. So we got nice spinning freely cam gear. And our new tappets, let me throw a little lube on them. So I'm going to drop these in. These are cupped on one end. That cup is where your push rod seat goes. The other end is nice and flat. So that's the surface area that rides on the cam gear. So that goes in towards the cam gear. The cup goes upward. So this is the one that had the issue on the last go around removal, but look at that, it slides right in perfectly. Slides right in, bottoms out. Now if I rotate the cam and push on it, I feel it riding on the lobe. So there's the lobe rise and dump, dip, rise, dip. So that feels good. There's no restrictions on movement, so I feel like we're good. Maybe that other tappet was slightly bent from where it got hit so hard. So let's throw the other one in. This is the exhaust one. Same thing, goes in and rotates nice and freely, and it raises and lowers the push rod. So that's working real good. That feels good. That's good because that's going to save some money for the guy I'm doing this for, because I told him, I said, man, I hope that your cam gears and tappets are okay. And it looks like they're good, in great shape. So look how freely that spins now. And you hear the tappets are moving up and down. That's a great sign. So this piece is assembled and ready for reassembly with the rest of the engine. I'm glad that's done, because now I really can move on to the next part, which is our bearing installation. So I'm going to stop the camera, wipe my hands, and we'll get the bearings installed in the crankcase next. All right, so the bearing, it's been in the freezer for about a half hour, so it's pretty cold, frosting over in my hand. I'm gonna squirt some lube on that, get that ready to go in, get my glove on, because that case is still pretty hot to the touch. So I'm gonna hit it with a little bit more heat. Hey girl. A little bit of heat on there. Take the bearing, place it on. Okay, try to get it placed on there where it's relatively straight. Use the crankshaft to help that. Okay, so it's relatively straight. And put my other glove on. So bring it down slowly, get it to meet right on it. Just start to barely make contact. And then make sure we're square on the bottom of the crankcase and slowly push it in. Okay, the bottom's out. A little bit more. All right, that feels good. Okay, there we go. Front bearing's installed. You can see it's flush and looks good. Went in nice and straight. Now, if you really want to tap that in with a little more security, you could put a socket on the very outer side of it and tap it in some more, but that's going to be, to me, it's overkill. This is pressed in perfectly. So next we'll do the main bearing, and before we do that, let me think. How do I want to go about that? Get these oily gloves off. Pause camera. All right, for the rear bearing, what I like to do is, which here it is, Exhibit A, rear bearing. I like to find a socket, in this case a 13/16, that will literally go directly over top of the bearing, right on that outer piece of metal. So it's a really perfect, exact fit. And what I'll do is I'll put the engine and case into the press, and that's why you need a stubby socket so you can actually fit everything in there. I've already got that oiled inside, and the bearing is fresh out of the freezer, so it's nice and cold. So just like before, I'll set it, and when it goes in there, it never wants to sit perfectly. It always seems to go in a little bit crooked. And so I try to do this. I'll take my finger, spin it like that, and if I can see everything spins true, and basically there's no wobble, then I know that it's in there great. So now I can put my socket on top of the bearing, and you can see that it's a pretty close exact fit, and I can press it in that way. So before I do that, I need to heat this up. You know what's coming. Another way of doing the main bearing is with your crankshaft. You can actually let it ride in there with the crankshaft, and as you insert the crank, it will do the same thing. But I like to try this to at least get it started. So get my other glove on. I got this arbor press for a reason, and I like to use it for the right tool for the right job. So as you can see too, I'm not going to actually be able to push it in all the way. Just got it on there to get started. And let's see if I can, it's really hard to do this with the camera and filming it. So before I put any kind of real pressure on it, I just sort of move it around and center it, make sure all the force is going to go squarely down into the bearing. So, all right, there we go. I'm happy with how that feels. I'm going to start adding some pressure, and let's see if she'll go in. Yep, it's going in slowly. I'm watching the crankcase to make sure I don't bottom out with my press. All right. Okay, so it's initially in. It's not fully in, but I'm just checking to make sure it's square inside because I messed an engine up by doing that where it didn't go in straight. So now, a little more grease or oil. Now your crank shaft can go in, and that will let us drive the rest of it in. Some more oil there. This is where my arbor press has a narrow spot. There we go, like that. All right, let me go get another socket. Should have had this ready to go. So the big socket we're done with. We're going to put this one up. And I don't need a big socket again, just one that'll fit inside there and distribute the force. Just like that. All right. Thing I don't want is this motor sitting right on that bare metal. So I'll just take a little bit of this rag and put it over that. Just like that. Okay. All right. Squared up. So now I'm pushing the crankshaft into the bearing. And then I'm also going to be pushing the bearing the rest of the way into its seat. So that's the crank going into the bearing. There we go. So that went all the way in. And you can visualize it, see it when you spin it here. Try to get it to center with the light. You can see everything spins freely and feels good. Your connecting rod, they have a little groove in there. The lighting's terrible for this to put on camera, but you can see that your connecting rod is directly above that center in the crankshaft. So looks pretty good. I don't think I could get it any further in than that. And I'm just looking at everything spin and rotate, and it's true as far as there's no wobble. So again, remember this engine had a sudden stoppage. So at some point, a lot of energy was transferred into these components, and I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary. So, but smooth as butter. Butter's good. It's gonna make for a good running engine. So, all right, now we can start with some of the other bigger components. All right, next up, we're gonna start getting the cylinder ready for the valves and everything to go in that. So this is a brand new cylinder. Horizon had a few of these in stock that they actually had listed underneath of their clearance sale, and I could not believe it when I saw it, so I bought the last two they had in stock, and here we are a few months later with an engine that needs a cylinder. So that's nice and new, clean. You can see that's how it comes out of the box. There's nothing on it, so you don't have any of your rocker arms, pins, or nothing. So inside the cylinder, about the cleanest it'll ever be right there. So compared to what we have, I'm not going to use anything out of this cylinder here. I've got everything new. So that valve that's left in there, that's just going to stay just like that. So we're going to set that aside. And the first thing with this cylinder I'll start with is we're going to need the rocker arms, which are here. Got two of those, and they're completely symmetrical. There's nothing on these that you need to worry about intake versus exhaust. So that's the two of them side by side. They're the exact same dimensions and everything. So got those two. We need some springs and the retainers that come in these. Get those opened up, set on the table. And again, completely symmetrical. They don't matter which one they go on. These are tiny little keepers, so let's see, hopefully. Okay. I just opened it. That's empty. And I've only got one retainer. Oh, there it is. So tiny there. No, is that it? No. The hell's the other one at? Really? All right. Well, no bother. We've got one on the other cylinder. So, two valves, two keepers, and retainers. One retainer. We're missing one. And that should get us to the last thing we need, which is the valves. So these came from some seller on China, eBay, and I don't remember exactly what I paid. $50 sounds like, but fresh out of the package, brand new valves. So basically, top half of this engine's all brand new. And I believe on these two, or this engine, that the valves are again symmetrical. So they're completely identical intake and out exhaust valve. So you don't have to worry about putting them in the wrong thing. So all right. So next thing I got right here in front of me is a wad of paper towel. So we'll get that ready. So obviously your valve's got to be inserted from the bottom, go into the piston or into the cylinder and go up. So before we do that, got to lubricate. So we got a little bit of oil on everything when it comes back together. So I have a magnet that makes this super easy. If I can find the magnet. Well, my magnet, here it is. It's one of these little extendo magnets. So magnetic, sticks to it perfectly, and we'll run it up from the bottom. And when it gets a little bit poked out of the top, just grab the top and twist the magnet off. Now that's the first one in. And they will fall out, so you're going to leave the cylinder down. And second one in. Don't ever force nothing. Just kind of find its way in there and then let it go on its own. All right, so two valves. See inside the cylinder, they're in there happy as can be. Now we stuff in some paper towels or any kind of rag, whatever you got. When you stuff this in, you want it in there tight, because all this is doing is keeping those valves from falling in. So just like that. That way you can push on each of the valves from the top side and they're not going to fall in. All right. So then you've got two springs. We'll do one at a time. And again, doesn't matter which way's up, which way's down. It just goes into there just like that. And keeper actually has a flat bottom and a recess on the top side of it. There's the flat bottom, and then there's the recess on top. That recess is where your retainer goes into, so this is going to be fun to do on camera. Let me see. All right, got a little bit better angle here. I don't know if you'll even be able to see this, but so what I'll do is I'll push it over the valve, and these springs are not too bad, but you want to push the spring down just enough to where you can expose the top of the valve. It has a little bit of a seat on it. You can barely see it there. So that's just barely enough down. Now these little keepers are just barely magnetic enough where they'll stick on a tool or whatever. So that's all I have is on the end of this little 1.5 millimeter drive. And I just press down with one thumb, slide it in from the side, and hope for the best. Oh, you know what? There's two in there. That's why there's only one of those. I just saw it. There's there. And I dropped it. Son of a biscuit. All right, I found it. It fell on the floor. Below me is a little black rug, and it fell right into that rug, and I used my magnet here to find it. So, jeez, I can't stand dropping stuff. I do every time I work on stuff, and I have to drop like every part. It's just mandatory requirement. So, all right, let's get back on track here. So we got our spring on, and just gonna push it down pretty far down, like yonder. I'm gonna grab my keeper, and all I try to do is just drop it in there. And once I get it close, then I can manipulate it in place, but this is such a hard part to do. My spring is slowly coming up because my fingernail. All right, this is not working. There we go. That's the right tool for the job. Get on there. So once you get it on, you can barely slide it under that stem and then try to slowly bring it spring up. Now the tension is on the bottom of that, but it's not fully seated yet. So what I'm gonna do is push down a little bit more with the spring and try to push that keeper in place. There you go. You hear that click, and you can see the top of that stem is just now starting to show up. So now that's looking good. Now we can do the other one. I'm not going to film it because it's basically rinse and repeat. All right, so I got the exhaust valve and intake valves. They're both in. Springs are in, keepers are in. So now I'm going to remove the paper towel. And this is the most satisfying part. You can actually push on them and feel that spring tension. And you can hear the valves working inside. So that's good. They're in place. The next is the rocker arms. Before I get those, I need to pull. Here they are. I'll say the old rocker arm pins. They're still in the old rocker arm. So these are not made anymore. So if you lose these, you are hosed. So let's not lose them. So I just got done taking off the old rocker arm it's actually your adjustment screws. I didn't think about that till I was about to start putting them on, and both of these rocker arms, thankfully, we still have the parts or the ends of them where the adjustment screws go. So I put those on. It doesn't matter where they're set at; it's just in there to be in there. But there is an orientation to these. They're also just like the tappets; they're cupped on one end for your push rods. So that cup needs to face down, obviously, for your push rod to come up and interact with it. So that jives with your cylinder head, where this sits in the bracket like that, and the side that makes contact with the valve is this smooth rounded side right here. It has a smooth round radius. So that's the side that touches the valve. So once you get that installed there, you can drop that in, and now you can work uh, your what do they call pin into it. So these pins, I've got them soaking over here in some oil. So if you look at the cylinder head, they're threaded both on the inside parts of the thread. So you have to insert it through the outboard side, push it through your rocker arm, and then once it gets to the threads, you can then, with a little flathead, start threading it in place. So now these don't have to be very tight at all. They just have to stay snug. So when it gets to where it tightens up, I just literally barely push on it, and that's in place. So that's all you need on those. You don't have to tighten those down for fear of them coming out, because you've got a valve cover that literally fits right over and mechanically blocks that screw from coming loose. Now you don't want to run the motor without the valve covers on, because if they come loose, then you're going to throw your rocker arm, and good luck finding it. Ask me how I know. So there we go. That's an intake valve and adjustment screw installed with the rocker arm pin. Let's do the exhaust valve. It's really quick and easy to do. So uh, place that downward. Line the hole up roughly. Doesn't have to be perfect. And insert the rocker arm pin. Wiggle it through just a bit. It's like with anything, you shouldn't have to force it. There we go. A little bit at a time. Forward, back, up, down, all that to try to find that spot. There we go. It's working in. The threads on this one were a little bit gummed up. Well, I should have cleaned it a little bit more, but that's not too bad. It's going in. So now we're tight. We can see our threads are equidistant on both sides and snug just enough. There we go. Top of the engine's mostly done. I'll throw a little bit of oil on each part here. Just a little bit. And now, top of the cylinder's done. We can start with our reassembly of basically the bottom of the engine. So we've got a crankcase that's got crankshafts installed, bearings installed. The next piece we can do is our cam gear. So this here, there's all kinds of videos about cam gear timing and everything. So when you put your cam gear in, you're not timing your ignition on glow engines. All your timing is your valves. So when they open and close. So your cam gear has a dot that is right now in your view on here, barely visible. So that dot needs to go in, insert it just like that. And that dot meshes with your crankshaft spline gear at top dead center. So if you look at your rear of your thing, you've got top dead center. So it doesn't matter anything about which stroke or nothing, it's just TDC. So right there. So problem is, if you're handling the motor doing your your cam gear housing, you can move this or you can move the other gear. So what I do to hold this in place is get a rubber band and just wrap it around this, holding it vertically. That way this can't really move. It can move, but it's not going to move much. So let me go get a rubber band and we'll get ready to do that. All right, finally a little rubber band. Doesn't matter what size or anything, just has to be able to hold it. So try to feed it in there, wrap it around the crankshaft, and pull it around, up and over. So you get something like that. Now you got to make sure you don't have it in the way of where your cam gear housing is going to go. So you want it literally just up and around, kind of like that. So you can see it's still got a little movement, but when you let go, it's spring loaded to TDC. That's all we're looking for. That, and you don't have anything blocking the way of your cam gear housing. So here's how this is going to go down. I'm not going to film this because you're not going to see anything here. What's going to happen is this dot on this cam gear is going to be inserted just like that. 12 o'clock position or 6 o'clock position, basically. That's the spot. So I eyeball it from this direction. I'm looking down with my eyesight this way. So I know I don't have a gasket on there yet. I'm just showing you kind of a rough run how I do it. So what I do is I look down the engine and the cam gear, and I just kind of do several trial attempts. See, as soon as I start seeing that gear move, I'll stop and reset, and I'll recenter it. And I'll just do that until I get the feel of what it takes to find the proper alignment. So that went in, I'm gonna pull it out and look at where my gear is, and it may have moved a half a tooth, if that. So I'll do it again, and I'll pull it out, and I see that my gear has not moved. So I've got the feel for how it should go in. Now I'll do that, several dozen times until I get it right. And like right now, I'm gumming it up. So it's trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. And then when you can redo it in and out 2 or 3 times without any issue, it's a pretty high confidence that you've got it correct. So that's how I do it. I've had everything successful doing it that way, and that's what I'm going to do now. I'll try to film it, but it's going to be hard to film. So getting my gaskets ready. Again, this is from eBay, and they sell almost every gasket I've ever needed they've had. So get these out and ready to go. There's the gasket, lays right on top of there. And let's see how many tries it takes us. One more time out. It's perfect. Still perfect. All right, cylinder's ready for a piston. Got some of the oil in there already. Gonna pinch the ring gap, bring that together, slides right in. Up she goes. And our valves, our push rods are on the front of the motor, so this dot that's on the connecting rod needs to be on the front as well. See that little dot? And that allows this bevel around the front of the connecting rod. See, the back doesn't have one, the front does. Allows that bevel to capture some oil and oil that side of it. So, all right, got that done. Now we're ready to mate it to the crankcase. Really simple, just walk the connecting rod over the crankshaft and then kind of work it downward. And this is the hard part, is getting your valve push rod guide tubes into these boots. There it is. Now the other's in. So it's crooked looking, but that's because my cylinder's not seated yet all the way. So I'm just going to walk it down and wiggle it down. They need a little bit of wiggling on each one. And all they do is just keep oil from flying out of the motor, so they're not too imperative. So just first time this cylinder's been together with this crank, and I'm wondering if we got a problem. Because that's bottom dead center. And sometimes it doesn't line up till it gets a screw into it. So let's get a cylinder screw started. It has to really pull itself into alignment For now, it's like roughly in line, but it's not. It doesn't feel happy. I'm wondering, I'm hoping that this is the right piston off eBay. All right, so that took some encouragement. So basically, putting the cylinder on and these pushrod guide tubes in at the same time was a bit of a fit. It was binding up. So what I did was I really had to push down and kind of rotate, and it finally fell into place. But what I was worried about was when I was rotating the piston and crank and everything around, it was interfering. Something was hitting. So I thought, oh no, I've got the wrong piston and connecting rod off eBay. But it's in there. It seems to be working now fine. It just had a little bit of a problem getting that last little, whatever, tiny little bit in there. But it's back together, rotating freely. And there's no valve push rods in right now. So what we're going to do with that real quick is we'll just take out these, because you can't just drop them in, but we'll take out these rocker arm pins, remove the rocker arms, and drop them in. Should have done that or saved these for last, but we're learning here. So this rocker arm's got a pointier end on it. On one end, that goes towards the rocker arm. The push rod does. So drop one in, throw her back on there. And we'll do rinse and repeat what we did earlier with the rocker arm pin. Now the pin or the push rod's probably not seated correctly in that cup, but that's all right. We can fix that after the fact. So get that reasonably tight. And that one's actually seated in there perfectly. So that works. Do this side real quick. Pins out, rocker arms out, and push rod is going in. And reverse it. Now when you put all these back together, you may be worried like, oh no, I've got no compression. Well, it's because you haven't set your adjusted your valves yet. So valve adjustment is literally the last thing you do before you run it. See, this one's a little bit tighter. There we go. Slid it on through, get the threads going. Just barely snug. So yeah, this one you can see is it's not underneath of the valve or the rocker arm. So I'm just going to push the spring in, open the valve, and then there, it's cupped under it now. So now we can tell, rotate the motor over and see our valves working. So hard to describe it here. This is the intake valve. So there's the rotation. See what happens. That's intake stroke happening, compression, power stroke. There's exhaust stroke. So looks like we got the timing right, pretty close. All right, so these are reasonably snug. They're not tight yet on the cylinder base, all the bolts. Cam gear housing reasonably tight. The front of the motor, we can throw our brass collet back on, drive washer. That'll self-tighten itself when we get a propeller on there and tighten it up. Back of the motor, we've got this back plate. Real simple, that goes on in one direction. And there's no gasket on this particular one. Usually, but this gasket maker from eBay, they do provide you with a gasket. So I'm going to use it because why not? A little more clearance from your connecting rod. Crankshaft in this can't hurt. We are not far from running this motor. We'll have this running in probably, ooh, I don't know how long, maybe. Wow, these screws are tight. Holy crap, that's tight. All right, I'm gonna cut the camera off because my hands are going oily. All right, we got a reassembled engine. I got to a point where my hands were getting so dirty that I was getting camera dirty with oil. The camera was overheating because for some reason it can't record long duration like it's supposed to. But I have got this reassembled, set the valve lash. They're pretty tight. I don't run a feeler gauge. I just go by a little bit of a tap sound. As long as I can feel some movement with my fingers when I rock it back and forth, that's good enough for me. Everything seems to be working as far as the timing and the cam gear. It's got compression. I'm turning it over by hand, and there's your compression stroke, so it bounces back, lumps over. So it's pretty much ready to run. One thing I ran into, this carburetor was supposed to be brand new, but evidently I got scammed on eBay. Somebody restapled it and put it in a carburetor that had been previously ran, and it was gummed up. So I kind of took it apart, cleaned everything. There's no spring inside of that holds the throttle barrel out. Hopefully it'll run all right, but I'm gonna try it without it. Plus the O-rings inside of this thing are shot, so they're hardened plastic. But we're gonna try it. The guy that I'm doing this for, he wants it back kind of sooner rather than later, so I wanted to film every little bit of it, make a nice good video, but I had to finish it up and get it running. So I'm gonna get this mounted to the test stand, get my charger or my battery charged up for my starter because I'm not hand starting this sharp ass prop, and we'll see if it runs. I'm feeling optimistic though. It's a good looking engine. It's come back together pretty easily, and it feels good. So essentially the piston and ring are not brand new, so they're used, but I'm just gonna treat it like a break-in first run, which means low-ish RPM, 4,000 or so, for about 5-10 minutes, and just check everything and see what it looks like. So we'll get this on the test stand, and I'll pick it up from there. Just a crack off throttle. That was uneventful. Yeah, my fuel's still good. All right. I guess I got the needle settings right. Too many good things at once. I'm just gonna let it idle like that for a while. It's having a little issue drawing that fuel in. Got a bunch of bubbles in. Oh, it's got a kink in the line. Pull my tank back. There, that should do it. Yeah, I had a big kink in my line. There we go. It's not too bad. Send a video to the owner here. Hard to believe this was just a bunch of box of parts. But it's running. Oh, zoom it out, zoom it out, zoom it out. Well, there you go. We got the Sato 82 put back together. It's going to be on a B-17 sometime this summer, and hopefully I'll get a video of it flying and actually in action and running, flying, so doing some work. But I know it's a long video. Appreciate you watching. If you watched all this, it gives me something to do, something I enjoy. So thanks again.